Good to have you with us this morning, 1 week from Election Day. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers, and we're going to begin this Tuesday morning with exactly 1 week to go until Election Day. But it's, of course, already started with voters across the country heading to their polls early.
Let's check out the latest data from Target Smart, analyzed by NBC News' Decision Desk. Shows more than 46 million people have already taken advantage of early voting by casting their ballots. The early vote total shows slightly more registered Democrats than registered Republicans have voted so far. As for the campaigns, tonight in Washington, Vice President Harris is set to deliver what's being billed as a major closing argument address. She plans to speak at the Ellipse, the same location where former President Trump gave his infamous speech on January 6th, right before the attack on the Capitol.
Meanwhile, the fallout continues from the Trump campaign rally at Madison Square Garden this past weekend. Mr. Trump has not responded directly to the racist remarks about Puerto Rico made by comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, but we did hear yesterday from his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, when asked about it.
My own view on this is, look, again, I haven't seen the joke. Maybe it's a stupid racist joke, as you said. Maybe it's not. I haven't seen it. I'm not going to comment on the specifics of the joke. But I think that we have to stop getting so offended at every little thing in the United States of America. I'm so over it.
We have team coverage ahead this morning, including the latest on what's going on inside the campaigns with just 7 days to go. We're also going to take a look at a lawsuit filed by the Philadelphia District Attorney against Elon Musk and his $1 million giveaway to registered voters. But let's begin with NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard, who's following the Trump campaign, and NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba, who's covering Vice President Harris. Good morning to both of you. Vaughn, let's start with you. The bottom line is Madison Square Garden is still making headlines. There are a lot of people who were offended by that joke. Let's look at the numbers here, all right? The Pew Research Center says Puerto Ricans make up the second largest Hispanic voting group. They have a growing population in the swing state of Pennsylvania. Is there concern right now within the Trump campaign that this is blowing up to be a big deal that could hurt them in the election?
Absolutely. The Trump campaign, at the direction of Donald Trump, usually doesn't apologize or respond to any of its speakers or try to cool the waters. They did. In this instance, hours after this remark was made that Puerto Rico was a floating island of garbage, they came out and said that that did not reflect the views of Donald Trump or his campaign. Of course, we should note that each of these speakers, they were known who they were. They were not just brought up from the crowd. These were designated people to speak in the heart of Manhattan. And yet you noted there's hundreds of thousands of Puerto Rican voters in Pennsylvania alone, a key battleground state here. In 1 week out from the election, Donald Trump has worked over the course of the last 2 years to try to make the case to black voters, Latino voters, that the Republican Party under him, it is welcoming, and he wants to win even 1, 2, 3 percentage point higher concentration of those voters. In remarks like that, it doesn't bode much confidence for those voters who are trying to maybe potentially keep a more open mind to voting for Donald Trump in these closing days.
And Monica, let's bring you in here. The Harris campaign did not waste any time responding to those comments about Puerto Ricans. Tell us more.
Yeah, exactly, Savannah and Joe. They seized on those comments by launching a new digital ad that specifically is going to target Latino voters in the battleground states. You mentioned Pennsylvania, where there is certainly a sizable population, but there are also tens of thousands of Puerto Ricans living in states like North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Nevada. So this is really a moment where the Harris campaign thinks that this is an opening to also trying to remind voters of how Donald Trump acted when he was in office, when Hurricane Maria devastated the island in 2017. And they're getting at that in this new advertisement that I just mentioned. Here's a clip of it.
A floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
I will never forget what Donald Trump did. He abandoned the island and offered nothing more than paper towels and insults. Puerto Ricans deserve better. As president, I will always fight for you and your families, and together we can chart a new way forward.
So the other component to all of this is that the vice president actually spent Sunday trying to court Puerto Rican voters and laying out her own plans and policies and proposals for what she would do for the community. And that video was then shared in terms of laying out her agenda by major Puerto Rican superstars like Bad Bunny, Jennifer Lopez, Luis Fonsi, Ricky Martin, and they have a combined more than 300 million followers just on Instagram alone. So this is also a moment where the Harris campaign is trying to lean into some of their celebrity voices to amplify this message, guys.
So Monica, let's look ahead here. Vice President Harris set to give a speech tonight in Washington on the Ellipse, the same location where former President Trump gave his speech ahead of the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, nearly 4 years ago. Give us a preview of what we can expect.
Yeah, the location, of course, not at all accidental there. This is something that is being done by design because the Harris campaign also wants people to be able to visualize Vice President Harris with the White House behind her and be able to try to imagine what it could look like if she is in the White House, if she wins the election, or what the alternative would be. And she's going to spell that out in terms of what it would mean to have a second Trump term. She's going to try to talk about turning the page on the darkness and divisiveness that Donald Trump has touted throughout his campaign. They're going to argue, for instance, that she can present something more optimistic and uplifting. I'm told this isn't a completely dark speech, but that, of course, talking about January 6th and talking about preserving democracy is a very serious issue that she's going to lean into as well and make a big part of her closing argument, not just tonight, but then this will be a piece of everything in the remaining week until Election Day.
And Vaughn, let's talk about the Trump campaign in these final days. The former president's got a packed schedule, holding events at Mar-a-Lago, later in Pennsylvania. What's on the agenda?
He's slated to give remarks to the press. It's not exactly clear what his plan is this afternoon at his Mar-a-Lago estate. He also has campaign stops this week planned in the likes of Arizona, but also Nevada, which is become a blue state over last election cycles. But Donald Trump from California to New York has shown an eagerness to go to some of these blue states. Of course, though, for him, it's a question of exactly what his plans are here this weekend. You're looking at an electoral map. Americans are going to be watching on Tuesday night 7 key battleground states. That's a lot of land to cover from Nevada and Arizona back out here to Georgia, North Carolina. So for the Trump campaign, the Harris campaign, they're making these last-minute moves to try to target the best places that they can, understanding that some of these states in 2020, like Georgia and Arizona, came down to less than 11,000 votes. There is a lot on the line, getting those early vote numbers high, and then ultimately getting those final voters who haven't early voted out on Election Day.
The last 2 elections have taught us every vote truly does count.
Yeah.
All right, Vaughn and Monica, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Let's keep this conversation going with NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. John, always great to have you with us. Let's talk about polls. Where do things stand right now in polls on both a national level, but then, importantly, of course, battleground state level?
Yeah, it's freaking close everywhere, guys. If you look at the national polling averages, Kamala Harris up about a point, 48.6 to 47.5. You know, most of those polls, most of the polls we've seen for a long time within the margin of error. And then if you look at the battleground states, if you go through those, you're seeing basically the same thing. You know, Kamala Harris up by basically a point, half a point to a point in the 3 blue wall states, so-called blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. If she wins all 3 of those in Nebraska's 2nd district, centered around Omaha, she gets 270 electoral votes and wins. Donald Trump up by, you know, about a point in Arizona and Georgia, and you know, tied in Nevada. You look at all the polling and you realize that, you know, if the polls are correct, a slight breeze in one direction or the other over the course of the next week could make the difference in the election.
You say if the polls are correct, and that remains to be a major question. So with that in mind, lots of posturing and projecting on both sides. How confident are both campaigns right now? Of course, they're going to project confidence, but behind the scenes, what are you hearing, John?
I mean, there's something sort of innate in the psychology of the two parties where, you know, the Republicans are super confident, potentially getting a little high on their own supply in terms of the level of confidence. They are expressing tremendous confidence. They are talking about states that have not been considered to be battlegrounds as possible wins for Trump. And I'm not saying that that can't happen, but it just, the data that we're looking at doesn't suggest that, for example, Trump is going to win Colorado and New Mexico and Virginia and New Hampshire, which some of the folks in his orbit say is certainly possible, if not saying that outright that it'll happen. We're seeing Trump is going to travel to New Mexico, travel to Virginia as part of his closing argument. And those are not states that he needs in order to win the presidency. So they seem confident. On the other side, you got Democrats who are, even when they're winning, very frequently fretting that they are losing. So, they've sort of got a little bit of an opposite attitude. I think the last couple of days you've heard more confidence expressed by Democrats that they are in a good place to win than you had, say the week or two before that. But, the Democratic Party wouldn't be the Democratic Party if it didn't have, some butterflies in its stomach, particularly after the 2016 election where they were so confident Hillary Clinton was going to win and she lost.
John, how do you think the campaign should navigate these last closing days based on what we're seeing that are strengths, weaknesses for both of them? What should be on their to-do lists?
Everything. Leave it all out on the field right now. For the most part, I think the vast majority of voters have already made their decisions. You mentioned earlier the huge early voting totals. I can't remember exactly what number of tens of millions of people have already cast their ballots, but a lot of this is already in the bank. I think they're going to be focused, number one, on trying to turn out those folks and you hear Trump say this in his rallies, you hear versions of it from Kamala Harris and her surrogates, basically trying to get folks who don't normally vote, who don't normally participate in the political process, but agree with them to get up off the couch and go out to the polls. And I said, that's number one. Number two, they're still trying to win people over with a little bit of persuasion at the end. Donald Trump's last ad has a lot of positive sort of vibes about him, which is unusual. Typically his closing ads and closing messages are pretty negative about the opponent.
All right, John, thank you as always.
In the battleground state of Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia district attorney is now suing Elon Musk and his super PAC. The DA is trying to stop a daily $1 million giveaway to registered voters, which he says is illegal under state law.
Yeah, earlier this month, Musk's super PAC started giving away that $1 million to a random registered voter in a swing state who signed a petition supporting the First and Second Amendments. The PAC is also offering $100 to every Pennsylvania voter who signs the petition. Well, an attorney for the super PAC did not respond to requests for comment on the lawsuit.
NBC News Now legal analyst Angela Semidella joined us now with more on this. Angela, good morning. So the DA seeking an injunction on the giveaway. That's the biggest thing he can do right now to try and stop it before Election Day. He's claiming Musk and the super PAC are violating Pennsylvania's state law around lotteries. What is the DA's argument here? Could Musk face any legal consequences?
Good morning. Yes. So the DA is basically saying that this giveaway violates state law. And then secondly, that the harm to the public is so enormous at this point in time that the judge must actually step in and stop it. And the hearing is for Friday. So now first what they're alleging is that this giveaway qualifies as a lottery because something is being asked to give up in consideration for the possibility of getting money. And they're saying here that only the state of Pennsylvania can regulate and conduct any lottery, first of all, because there are very specific requirements, like you have to tell each person their odds of winning the lottery and give specific ideas of how that payment can then be gotten. But in addition, they are saying that it violates laws because it harms and exploits the people, that these vulnerable populations are not protected if you allow random companies or PACs or people to give these lotteries. Now, what is so fascinating about this, though, is that usually this argument is based in people having to pay money, like get lottery tickets, and thus that exploitation is possible. But here, the argument is that the personal information that these individuals are giving up is of value. So you have to give your cell phone, your email address, and your mailing address in order to qualify.
So, Angela, hearing is set for Friday morning. What is the judge considering here in making a ruling? What's the likelihood the court rules in the DA's favor?
So the judge has to consider both those things. So first of all, is it actually illegal? And obviously, these questions are usually determined in a court of law, possibly by a jury, right? But they have to decide that this argument is so strong and so in the favor here of the person filing the lawsuit. And secondly, that the possible harm to the public is so great that they have to step skip over the jury step and just make sure this happens right now. So I think that the possibility is significant that the judge will step in here, given that obviously there was one paragraph in the lawsuit of how the possibility of undue influence on an election is so significant that there is no other remedy at this time.
So just as a practical matter, if the injunction is granted, will the voter who received $1 million check have to give it back, or is this just an injunction for everything moving forward?
So that's a great question. So the lawsuit's not asking for that. The lawsuit is only asking for this to be stopped immediately. Now, that type of situation could be litigated between Musk and the PAC and the people. So, for example, if the judge then does decide that all that money has to be given back, then whoever did win that money could possibly then sue Musk. So, that is another possibility.
All right, Angela Senadella, fascinating conversation.
Certainly.
Thank you so much.
Well, a mix of rain and snow is headed for the Rockies. Let's get a look at how that storm system might impact you with your Morning News Now weather.
Meteorologist Angie Lastman is here. Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. This storm system is going to be on the move over the next couple of days, but right now we've got plenty of winter alerts up across parts of the Rockies, Yellowstone stretching down to Aspen, Park City included in this here as it works its way to the east. We've got plenty of that heavy snow that we're going to watch be kind of draped across the Rockies through the day today. Also notice the kind of chilly rain that we'll see for parts of the northern plains as we get into the afternoon hours today. The good news is we're not looking at a whole lot in the way of some strong storms. This will be later today, tonight, just some general thunderstorms, maybe a few rumbles that you could hear across that region here as we get into the evening hours. Then tomorrow we'll start to see that severe threat ramp up. We'll also see the potential for some heavy rain, specifically stretched from Oklahoma up into portions of the UP of Michigan. We'll see that line of thunderstorms potentially become severe. We've got plenty of warmth to tap into. We know it's been running way above normal across this region. So the slight risk for some of these thunderstorms will specifically be from Iowa to northern Texas, Dallas, Oklahoma City, and Springfield included in that. We're mainly looking for some large hail, maybe some gusty winds, and a few tornadoes. That tornado risk is going to be on the low end, but we'll still watch for one or two here and there. As we get into Thursday, getting into the latter part of our work week, we'll see that heavy rain and the flooding threat from Tennessee stretching down to the Texas coastline into Louisiana. That'll be something we watch through the day on Thursday. Again, not a great risk of severe storms, but still a couple of general thunderstorms that we'll have to track. When it comes to heavy rainfall amounts, those will be centered across the upper Midwest, Des Moines specifically, stretching into, again, the UP of Michigan. We'll see 1 to 2, maybe even up to 3 inches of rain, so we'll watch for that to impact plans. And travel across the Rockies will be difficult, at least through midweek. Salt Lake City, Casper, Yellowstone, and some of these spots are going to pick up to a foot of snow, so feeling like winter there. Meanwhile, feeling like summer basically everywhere east of that. We've got temperatures way above normal. Chicago is expected to hit 82 degrees today, wow. 26 degrees above where we should be, guys. This is not a typical late October temperature. And unfortunately, the records will be possible again for tomorrow. 84 degrees in St. Louis, upper 70s for Pittsburgh, 80 degrees in Flint. I mean, Green Bay heading into the upper 70s, just not where we expect our temperatures to land. That all kind of comes to an end, and we start to see temperatures turning a little cooler by the time we end our work week. We'll go from the upper 70s in Cleveland on Thursday to the mid 50s by Friday. So if you've been waiting for some fall, here it comes.
But for now, everyone in the northern part of the country has these unexpectedly golden tans.
It's true.
This time of year,
and your Halloween costumes in a lot of spots don't need your coat.
There you go. All right. Thanks, Angie. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.